It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon in downtown Tucson, Arizona. The kind of day where the desert heat blurs the horizon, and people move a little slower to escape the sun. But on that day, a single impulsive act would spiral into a courtroom drama that no one saw coming. Sean Charles Dunn, a 45-year-old local man, was standing in line at a busy cafe near the federal courthouse. To anyone watching, he seemed like any other customer. A sandwich in hand, earbuds in, lost in thought. But just outside, a group of federal agents were completing a separate operation. One of those agents, according to reports, crossed paths with Dunn in what witnesses later described as a tense exchange of words. And then, it happened. In a moment that would soon make national headlines, Dunn allegedly threw his sandwich, a half-eaten sub, at the agent. It wasn't a punch, or a weapon. But in the eyes of federal law, it was still considered assaulting a federal officer. Within seconds, Dunn was handcuffed. Shock rippled through the bystanders. "He threw a sandwich, not a rock," one witness reportedly shouted. But procedure is procedure, and the federal agents didn't see the humor in the situation. By the end of the day, Sean Dunn was booked, fingerprinted, and facing charges that could have landed him in prison. What might have been dismissed as a childish prank instead became a serious federal case. The story spread quickly, first through local Tucson blogs, then across national outlets. Some saw it as a ridiculous overreaction by the government. Others argued that no assault, no matter how small, should be tolerated against law enforcement. But beneath the viral headlines and jokes about assault with a deadly sandwich, there was a real man facing the full weight of the justice system. Who was Sean Dunn? What led to that moment? And how did this bizarre story end in one of the most surprising verdicts of the year? That's where our story begins, not with a crime of violence or greed, but with an impulsive act that exposed something deeper about power, accountability, and the strange ways justice can unfold in America. In the weeks following Sean Dunn's arrest, Tucson became the unlikely stage for a courtroom drama that seemed too absurd to be real. The charge? Assaulting a federal officer. The weapon? A sandwich. For Sean, it was surreal. Friends described him as calm, polite, and sometimes even shy. "He's not the kind of guy to start trouble," one neighbor told reporters. But the prosecution saw things differently. In their eyes, Dunn's action wasn't a joke. It was a deliberate attack on federal authority. As the case moved to trial, the details became stranger. The federal agent testified that the sandwich struck him on the shoulder, not hard enough to injure, but enough to constitute unwanted and aggressive contact. The prosecutor argued that intent was what mattered, not the damage. "Whether it's a fist, a rock, or a sandwich," he said in court, "assaulting a federal officer cannot be tolerated." The defense fired back with equal force. Dunn's attorney described the situation as a gross overreach of power, arguing that his client's action was a moment of frustration, not aggression. The sandwich, he reminded the court, was half-eaten and soft, hardly a weapon capable of harm. Outside the courthouse, cameras lined the street. The story had gone viral. Social media was flooded with memes, jokes, and hot takes. Hashtags like #SandwichGate and #BreadAndJustice started trending. Late-night hosts mocked the case, while legal analysts debated whether it revealed a larger issue, the growing tension between citizens and federal law enforcement. But for Sean, it was no laughing matter. Every hearing was another reminder that a split-second mistake could cost him years of freedom. He sat quietly in the courtroom, often staring down at his hands, as reporters scribbled notes about the man who threw a sandwich and started a national debate. Then came the twist. During cross-examination, defense attorneys revealed footage from a cafe security camera showing the moment just before the incident. In the grainy video, Sean is seen walking by the agent, gesturing briefly, and then tossing the sandwich to the side, not directly at anyone. It was enough to create reasonable doubt. Some jurors even smiled at the absurdity of it. The tension broke in the courtroom. What had been framed as a serious assault now looked like what it probably was, an impulsive, careless toss, not a criminal act of violence. But the government wasn't ready to back down. "We have to draw a line somewhere," the prosecutor said in closing arguments. "Law enforcement deserves protection, even from small acts of defiance that challenge that authority." The defense's response was simple, but powerful. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are not here to protect egos. We are here to seek justice. And justice requires common sense." By the time the jury left the room, no one knew which way it would go. Would they see a federal system overreaching for control, or a citizen who crossed the line? The jury deliberated for only 3 hours, but to Sean Dunn, it felt like days. He sat motionless in the courtroom, his hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the wooden table in front of him. Reporters filled every seat, waiting for what had become one of the most bizarre federal trials in recent memory. When the jurors returned, the air was thick with tension. The foreperson stood, holding the verdict form. The clerk asked the question everyone had been waiting for. "In the case of the United States versus Sean Dunn, how does the jury find the defendant?" A pause. Then, "Not guilty." A murmur rippled through the room. Some gasped, some laughed quietly in disbelief. Sean's attorney placed a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "It's over." But Sean didn't move at first. He just sat there, tears welling in his eyes as if trying to process that a single thrown sandwich hadn't destroyed his life after all. Outside, the courthouse erupted in a mix of cheers and cameras. Crowds that had gathered for days chanted, "Justice for Sean!" as news outlets rushed to break the story. "Man acquitted in federal sandwich case." Within hours, it was trending again, this time as a symbol of common sense triumphing over bureaucracy. Legal experts quickly weighed in. Some called the verdict a relief, proof that the justice system still had room for reason. Others criticized it as mocking the seriousness of law enforcement. But to many Americans, the case became something larger, a mirror reflecting how easily everyday actions could be twisted into federal offenses. Sean's lawyer gave a short statement to reporters. "Today's verdict reminds us that justice is not about pride, it's about truth. The government should never weaponize its power over something so trivial." Sean himself said little. When asked what he'd learned, he simply replied, "That freedom shouldn't depend on what you throw, or who's watching." Over the next few weeks, the memes kept coming. Late-night hosts cracked jokes, comedians reenacted the crime, and social media flooded with parody t-shirts reading, "Assaulted by lunch." But behind the laughter was a real story about fear, overreach, and the blurry line between justice and absurdity. For the federal agent involved, the moment was far less humorous. He remained silent, declining all interviews. Insiders said the department quietly reviewed internal procedures on when, and how, to escalate minor incidents into criminal charges. And for Sean Dunn? Life slowly returned to normal. He moved out of Tucson a few months later, hoping to escape the fame he never wanted. Friends said he took a job at a mechanic's shop under a different name, avoiding interviews and cameras. But his story continued to echo online, a permanent reminder of how fragile the balance between authority and freedom can be. In the end, the sandwich case became more than a headline. It became a question. How far should justice go, and when does it go too far? If this story shocked you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because next time, we're uncovering another unbelievable real-life case where truth is stranger than fiction. Stay curious, and stay questioning.